My husband left me for my mother, but when he realized she inherited nothing while I got everything, he came crawling back. Hey folks, let me tell you, I am in one hell of a mess right now. My crazy father-in-law and my soon-to-be ex-wife, let's call her Jessica, have teamed up to ruin my peace of mind just because of their own greed. I wish I could talk about this with my buddies, but it is just too damn personal and embarrassing to bring up in real life. Trust me, by the time I am done telling you this, you will understand exactly why. I do not have much family left, so it is not like I can call up an uncle or a cousin to vent about this disaster. So here I am, turning to all of you, hoping to just get this off my chest and figure out if I am really the bad guy here the way they are making me out to be. So this whole circus started just 2 weeks ago, out of the blue. My wife of 3 years again, we are calling her Jessica, sat me down one night after dinner and told me, with a straight face, that she wanted out because she had fallen in love with my father-in-law. Yeah, you read that right. No, I am not kidding. And no, I am not on drugs. The way she said it, like it was just another Tuesday, nearly made me choke on my beer. Then, she dropped the real bomb. She had been sneaking around with him for the past 3 months. 3 months! While I was working my tail off, keeping the lights on, making sure we had a future, she was out playing house with a man twice her age. And the worst part? I never had a damn clue. Not once did she act suspicious. Not once did she give me a reason to doubt her. A little background here. My father-in-law, let's call him Richard, is just about 20 years older than Jessica. She is 27 now, and he is 47. A real charmer, huh? Jessica was born while Richard was still in college. Her mom had bailed early on, and Richard, well, he never really grew up. He left school and bounced from job to job, never holding anything steady. Lucky for him, his parents had money, real money. So instead of figuring out how to be a responsible adult, he just lived off their generosity. They paid his rent, covered his mistakes, and set him up in one cushy gig after another, none of which he ever took seriously. He finally landed on interior decoration. Not designing, mind you, he is no professional. He just tells rich people where to put their couches and how to make their overpriced houses look trendy. And somehow he has convinced people he knows what he is talking about. The only reason he even got into that was because his dad was a well-known real estate mogul who tossed jobs his way. If Richard had been born into any other family, he would have been sleeping in his car by now. Jessica and I met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. Right from the start, we hit it off. We liked the same music, the same movies, even had the same taste in food. We dated for 2 years, and when she proposed at ES, she was the one who asked I said yes without a second thought. She seemed like a great woman, down to earth, funny, smart, or at least I thought she was. Over the years, she would joke about how hot her dad was, which always made me a little uncomfortable, but I figured she was just messing around. People joke about weird things, right? I never thought much of it. I never in a million years imagined she actually meant it. So there I was, sitting on my couch, listening to my wife tell me she had been sleeping with her own damn father-in-law. And what did I do? I threw her out, right then and there. She packed a bag and left without much of a fight. Why? Because she already had a place to go. She just walked right out of my house and into his. That night, I drank myself stupid. I do not even remember half of what I did. I know I finished off an entire bottle of whiskey, sat on my couch, and just stared at the wall for hours. Somewhere around 4:30 in the morning, in a haze of alcohol and fury, I pulled out my phone and sent Richard a message. I told him exactly what I thought of him. I called him a useless con artist who had done nothing with his life. Told him he was a deadbeat, a joke of a man, and that Jessica would realize what a loser he was the second his Botox wore off and his bank account ran dry. I did not expect a reply, but I got one, and it was the best reply I could have hoped for. Richard, in all his arrogance, sent me a text bragging about how he did not care what I thought. He said that he would never be broke because he was about to get a massive inheritance from his father's will. That was when I remembered. Jessica's grandfather had passed away 6 months ago. His estate was still going through probate, and nobody had been told exactly what they were getting yet. But Richard was convinced no. He was certain that he was about to come into millions. And he and Jessica were probably licking their lips, waiting for the money to roll in. What they did not know was that the lawyer had already called me, and I had inherited everything. I did not reply. I just waited. A few days later, Jessica showed up at my door. Looking all sweet and apologetic, she told me she had made a mistake. She said she realized how much she loved me, how what we had was real, and she wanted to come back home. I did not even let her inside. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through our old messages, found the one where she told me she was in love with Richard, and forwarded it right back to her. Then I blocked her number. I knew exactly what had happened. The lawyer had called Richard and told him the will had been finalized, and Richard had inherited absolutely nothing. All he got was an old watch and a set of cufflinks. The houses, the businesses, the cash had all been left to me. Jessica and Richard had bet everything on him getting the money. They had burned my marriage to the ground because they thought they were about to be rich. And when that did not happen, she came crawling back. She thought I was stupid enough to take her in. Hell no. I sat back, took a deep breath, and let karma do its thing. The next day, I got a text from a mutual friend. Apparently, Richard had thrown Jessica out of his house in a fit of rage. I guess betrayal is only fun when you are the one doing it. As for me, I am done with both of them. Divorce papers are filed, my new life is ahead of me, and let me tell you, I am sleeping like a baby at night knowing that those two got exactly what they deserved. And the best part? I did not even have to lift a finger. I laughed out loud when I read her sad little attempt at crawling back. She and that fool must have thought I had no idea that my father-in-law had walked away with nothing while I got everything. They were probably still sitting around waiting for that big payday that was never going to come. I let it stew in my mind for a whole day, thinking of the perfect way to reply. Then, I simply sent her a clown emoji and blocked her. That was it. But I knew that Richard, my father-in-law, was still in the dark about what Jessica had done. So, for good measure, I took a screenshot of her message, added 3 clown emojis, and sent it to him. Then, I turned my phone off. I was not about to waste my evening dealing with their ridiculous drama. Instead, I poured myself a drink, put on some Netflix, and finally enjoyed a peaceful night. But the next morning, the fun really began. I got a call from an old friend of mine, someone who still lived next to Richard. She was practically laughing before she even said hello. Apparently, things had gone completely off the rails at his house last night. Jessica had been screaming her head off, and Richard had been right there with her, both of them yelling at each other so loudly that the neighbors had all come outside to see what was going on. Then, out of nowhere, Richard had shoved her out of his house. And I do not mean he just asked her to leave, I mean he physically kicked her out the front door. She had barely managed to grab her purse before she was tumbling down the front steps, landing right on the pavement. That was not even the worst of it. Richard, in a fit of pure rage, had started chucking things at her. Shoes, clothes, some stupid vase he probably did not even like. He was calling her every nasty name in the book, making sure the whole street heard him. And then came the cherry on top. Richard, being the genius that he is, grabbed a heavy book and hurled it straight at Jessica's head. She did not dodge fast enough, and it hit her right in the forehead. When the neighbors ran over, she was already bleeding, trying to stop it with her hands. Turns out she needed 5 stitches. And, like the coward she is, she went straight to the cops. Richard got hit with some charges, but since he had a good lawyer and connections, he got off with just a fine. The police chalked it up to a domestic dispute gone too far. And of course, Jessica blamed me for all of it. She got back to wherever she was staying, pulled out her second phone number, because of course she has one, and started spamming me with messages, blaming me for ruining her life. I ignored all of them. But I could not help but wonder, was this actually my fault? I mean, do not get me wrong. What she and Richard did to me was disgusting. But had I taken things too far by exposing her, would all of this have happened if I had just let them sit in their own misery? Maybe. But at the same time, I had not made Richard lose his temper. I had not forced Jessica to betray me. I had not told either of them to be absolute idiots. No, they did that all on their own. And yet, there she was, playing the victim. Even Richard, as ridiculous as it sounds, was throwing himself a pity party, posting vague messages online about betrayal and trusting the wrong people. The irony was enough to make me sick. At this point, I knew exactly what was happening. They were both desperate to shift the blame onto someone else because neither of them wanted to admit that they had done this to themselves. But you know what? I do not feel bad anymore. Update 1. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone for the support. Seriously, I was not expecting so many people to actually take my side on this. I had been going back and forth in my own head, but reading your comments really helped. A lot of you had kind words about my grandfather too, and I appreciate that more than I can say. He was one of a kind. Having him in my life made up for having to deal with these insane people, that is for sure. And as for the guilt, yeah, that is gone now. Jessica and Richard burned my marriage to the ground, so I burned their little fantasy life. Fair is fair. Jessica was the one who lost her mind and attacked the man she loved, not me. She is the lunatic here, not me. And she sure as hell is not about to make me feel guilty for what she did. Richard got hurt? Yeah, I guess I feel a little bad for him. But not too bad. A physical attack is never justified, but Kamonhei cheated on his wife with his own father-in-law. That is next level disgusting. And the fact that he thought he could crawl back to me after all that? Yeah, he deserved a reality check. So I have blocked them both. Everywhere. I even went so far as to block Jessica on PayPal, just to be safe. Ha! But in all seriousness, I have been thinking about getting a restraining order. Jessica is completely unhinged, and I have no idea what she might do next. I am not about to move out of my house and change my entire life just because she is crazy. If she wants to come after me, she is going to have to deal with the law. I just hope it does not come to that. Update 2. Well, it looks like it might come to that after all. I had ignored Jessica completely for almost 2 weeks, and things were starting to feel normal again. Richard responded to the divorce petition, and he was not contesting it, which meant this nightmare was finally coming to an end. With enough therapy and time, I knew I would get past it. But then, yesterday happened. I got home from work, pulled into my driveway, and guess who was standing on my lawn? Jessica. I did not even get out of my car. I rolled my window down and told her to get lost or I was calling the cops. She did not move. Instead, she just stood there, staring at me, and said that I could do whatever I wanted, but she was not leaving until she talked to me about the inheritance. I sighed and told her to go ahead, because honestly, I was curious about what she thought she was owed. And, in the most serious voice possible, she said she wanted half. Half of everything. Because in her mind, it was only fair since my grandfather was her father too. I actually laughed in her face. I told her she was the last person who should be talking about fairness. Then I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. That was when she snapped. She marched toward my car, and I rolled my window up just in time to watch her kick the passenger side door as hard as she could. I stayed put until she stormed back to her car and drove away. Then I got out and looked at the damage. A massive dent. So I took pictures, pulled up the security footage, and sent everything to my lawyer. I told her I wanted to file that restraining order now. So that is happening. Update 3. The divorce is still ongoing, and it is exhausting. Richard and his lawyer are trying to twist everything, so I am gathering all the proof I can of his cheating. Hopefully, once I have everything, this whole thing will be over. At least I got the restraining order against Jessica. That is one less headache to deal with. I am also making sure to go to therapy, because the last thing I want is to turn into someone like her. I just needed to vent here one last time, but I feel a lot better now. I will check back in when the divorce is finalized. For now, that is all.